So in today's episode of A Man Aggressively Yells History at You, we're starting off strong by talking about stereotypes.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Now hear me out, because generally speaking, when it comes to stereotypes, each branch of the military attracts a certain kind of person. For example, if you're looking to join the Navy, you're probably someone looking for adventure, or maybe just because you love a man in uniform.
I have relationships with women and sex with men.
And I got news for you. That means you're gay.
Hey, you know what? No judgment here. On the other hand, if your idea of dressing fancy is putting on your favorite grunt style or Tango Alpha shirt, well then, congratulations. You've got Army written all over you. And of course, if the word Karen isn't your name, but rather a state of mind, well, it's entirely possible that the Air Force is what blue can do for you.
It's that simple.
Going to break my window and vandalize the car?
Yes, and
absolutely.
You're going to go to jail.
For what?
But of all the branches that you could choose, why would anyone in their right mind be drawn to the Marines? Well, if you're the type of person who thinks that fighting, fudging, and 50 Shades of Red are the keys to a happy life, well then congratulations. You might be a Marine.
I knew it.
And today you're going to learn about one of the original poster children for what it meant to be a Marine, right after a word from today's sponsor.
Delete me.
Why are you mixing up 5.56 and crayons together in a bowl?
It's for the 250th Marine Corps birthday, so I wanted to make them a cake.
That checks out, actually. I love that woman. This video is sponsored by Delete Me. Alright, so let's be honest here, you guys. If you watch my channel, then you also watch The Fat Electrician, which means you already know about Delete Me. But in case you haven't and you're still on the fence about it, then let me get you up to speed. So basically, the way the internet works is that all these free services that you use, you know, Google, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, well, they all sell your personal information to data brokers. Now that doesn't sound very nice at all, so why would they do that? Simple, because nothing in life is free, and for the privilege of using their free service, they've got to make money off of you somehow. And this is where Delete Me swoops in like an overprotective dad. They are going to go through all the major data brokers, they're going to find the ones who are selling your personal information, and they are going to beat them into submission. I mean, they're going to submit opt-out requests on your behalf. Now, the question you might be wondering is, could you do this by yourself? Yes, absolutely, of course you could. Are you going to? I think you and I both know the answer to that. You still haven't canceled that free trial you swore was a one and done thing, so you definitely aren't going to jump through the hoops of getting your data off of these call lists. And guys, I think this is a great deal, and truth be told, even if Delete Me wasn't sponsoring this video, I was going to sign up with them anyway because these phone calls are straight up getting out of control. Now, while I can't get you their services for free, what I can give you is a link and a discount code below. Go to joindeleteme.com/TAC and use my code TAC at checkout for a 20% discount. Now, back to the video. Albert Andrew Schmid was born on October 20th, 1920 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Albert, or Al as everyone called him, was one of 3 kids with an older brother and a younger sister who he was fiercely protective of. Now, part of this was because times were just different back then, and that's just what you did. Remember folks, chivalry used to be a thing. On the other hand, this is a Marine in the making that we're talking about here, and he has fully admitted to using anyone who would lay a hand on his sister as an excuse to beat the absolute dog shit out of them. And you don't have to take my word for it, I'll let the man do his own talking. Quote, "Jesus Christmas, how I love to fight."
Damn! Is there anything in this world better than punching a motherfucker in the face who's got it coming?
And when Al wasn't using mild acts of being provoked as an excuse to rearrange your facial structure, he was out doing his 2 other favorite things in the world, which was shooting stuff and catching skunks.
Why?
Al and his buddy would go skunk hunting almost every night. They'd sell the skins for $1 a piece, which when adjusted for 2025 cash monies, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $16 to $19 a pop. Who would have thought that murdering restraining order stink weasels could be so lucrative?
I'm rich, bitch!
Al and his buddy took their skunk hunting so serious that they would be on a date in their Sunday best and just see a skunk on the side of the road and they would pull over and just grab it. And when I say grab it, I literally mean he would just reach down and grab it by the tail. According to Al, if you were quick enough, then they couldn't spray you. And Al must have been very quick because he never got sprayed. Not even once.
I'm fast as fuck, boy.
And when Al wasn't beating on the local 2- and 4-legged population, he was doing his straight up most favorite thing in the world, which was shooting stuff. By 11 years old, the boy was an absolute menace. He would shoot absolutely anything. It didn't matter what it was. Crows, cats, dogs, it didn't matter. Everything was fair game, even the gas street lamps.
Woohoo! Look at that shit! Oh man, we're gonna get so busted.
Unfortunately for the rest of the world, his love of shooting only increased the older he got. By the time he was 15 years old, he went to work on a farm, and during this time, he bought himself a .22 rifle. Now one day on the job, he ran into a rich old lady who was having a problem with stray cats on her property. And after a bit of conversation, she wondered if Al would take care of them, to which Al responded,
"Oh, say less."
Al worked on that farm for an entire year, and on top of that, he was also paid a quarter or about $5 for every cat that he killed. After his year on the farm was up, he returned home, and he had saved up a pretty good rainy day fund to invest in his future.
You sure about that?
Oh, I misread that. Actually, he blew all of his cat killing money on a shotgun and only returned home with $8 or about $180 for a year's worth of work, which again is pretty on brand for a Marine in the making. Who needs food and good financial decisions when you've got a sweet new gun to show off to the boys?
Not me.
But you know what? Whatever. What's done is done, and Al went looking for the next job that would feed his stubborn need to work hard and shoot stuff. He soon found himself working on another farm where his job would be to grind corn and sack it up. One day he found himself in front of an amount of corn that was easily a 2-man job, but Al, being stubborn and independent, decided to grind the entire pile by himself in a single afternoon. And this became kind of a typical routine for Al, because the faster he got done grinding and sacking his corn, the sooner he could go back to shooting stuff. So that's what he would do. He would grind it up, sack it up, throw it on his shoulder, and run down the stairs with it. Now keep in mind that these sacks are like 60 pounds a piece, and Al was doing this so fast and so often that the sacks were wearing through his shirt onto his bare skin, and they would leave him completely black and raw. Guys, I'm trying to tell you, the man would literally work the clothes off of his back, then go run miles and miles during his hunts. Then he'd go out partying, dancing, and gambling, go home, sleep, wake up, and do it all over again the next day. If I haven't made it clear by now, I'll say it again. Whether he realized it or not, Al Schmid was a true Marine in the making.
This is my rifle, this is my gun, this is for fun, and this is for fun.
Alright, so fast forward a bit, and it is now spring of 1940, and Al is tired of making pennies on the dollar. It's time for him to go and make some real money. He decides to trade farm life for city life and lands him a job at the Dodge Steel Company. And really, not much has changed. In his spare time, he's still shooting guns and partying, but also Al was a bit of a ladies' man. Al would always keep a rotation of girls on hand, and he never stayed with any of them for very long. Case in point, one time he had a date planned, and when he got to her house, her grandmother answered the door and told him that she wasn't there, but she'd be right back. Al waited for exactly 10 minutes before walking directly across the street, linked up with another girl that he had on rotation, and he took her out on a date instead.
My nigga.
And that's just how Al got down. He was this young guy out here living his best life, and he wasn't gonna wait around for anyone, especially not a girl. Or at least that's how he felt until he met Ruth. When Al moved into the city, he decided to move in with one of his co-workers and his wife. His buddy's wife had a friend named Ruth who would come over and hang out quite a bit, but Al, he never seemed to notice her. But that all changed one night when Al was downstairs counting all of his cigarette money change, and Ruth decided to help him. Now, Al, being the jokester that he was, started purposely dropping pennies on the ground, and both of them would just crawl around trying to find them. This was the first time Al had seen the normally shy Ruth turn into a belly-laughing mess, and pretty soon, they started dating.
I guess you could say things are getting pretty serious.
Jumping ahead a bit, and it is now Sunday, December 7th, 1941, and Al has another date planned with Ruth. While getting ready, Al and his roommate were listening to dance music when suddenly the radio abruptly changed to a voice saying, "The United States has been attacked. The Japs have bombed Pearl Harbor." Now at first, Al thinks that this is a joke, but pretty soon it becomes crystal clear that it is not. Throughout his entire date, he could not get this attack off of his mind, and this continued all the way into the next day at work. work. The following day at work, Al noticed that a couple of his buddies didn't come in, and when he found out where they had went, it turned out that they had gone down to join the Marine Corps. For Al, hearing this was like a light switch going off in his head. This horrible feeling that he couldn't shake became crystal clear. He knew that he had to get into this fight with the Japanese and that he'd have to do it quick. By Thursday morning, December 11th, only 4 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Al made his way down to a recruiting office. And it wasn't just him either. Al had to wait for over 4 hours because the line was full of thousands of other men wanting to get themselves some payback. Fortunately for Al, he made the cut and he would ship off for Paris Island on January 5th, 1942. While he was away, he received a letter from his old job, and inside of it was a year-end bonus check of $60. And Al knew exactly what he was going to do with it. One day, Ruth received a letter in the mail along with a small cardboard box from Al. Inside the box was a card that read, "Till I come home, Al," and underneath that was a diamond engagement ring. Apparently, they were now engaged, which was a surprise to her because until right now, in this very moment, Ruth had no idea that that was the case, but nonetheless, according to Al, they were. In one of his final letters to Ruth, before his training would really kick into high gear, he would write to her, quote, "All we're doing now is just waiting. It's just hours now. I'll have to close now as it's time for chow, so until you hear from me, I'll say so long for now. Your brown-eyed devil, Al." After several months of amphibious landing training, Al and the men of Hotel Company's 2nd Battalion 1st Marine Regiment were just anxious to get going. Al had been trained as a machine gunner along with his buddy, Johnny Rivers. On August 6th, their transport ship would finally reach its destination, and after what felt like an eternity of waiting, the first wave of naval guns finally went off. Al and the boys got the green light to board the Higgins boats, and after reaching the island, they began their approach. Al's squad would spend their first 3 days on land chasing the Japanese through swamps, rivers, and mud, all while battling hot, sticky heat and clouds of mosquitoes. Not an ideal situation at all, but for Al, the single most important thing to him was to never, ever let his machine gun get dirty. And this was something that he took extremely serious. When they would have to wade through ankle-deep mud, when they'd have to climb hills so steep that they needed a rope, hell, even when they'd have to slide down a slope like the world's shittiest roller coaster, and they would get mud absolutely caked up their pants, legs, and ass, Al would never let that machine gun get mud on it. Ever. They stayed on the move constantly, and the sand from the river crossings was so abrasive that Al began to develop blisters on the bottom of his feet the size of quarters.
Okay. Oh, all right.
Is it bad?
No, it's not that bad.
And as if their misery couldn't get any worse, during one of the sea battles, the ship that they had been on had been sunk. That meant all of their good uniforms, their medals, their food, their supplies, all of it went down with it. This meant that all they had to eat now was nothing but field rations, hardtack, coconuts, and occasionally they'd get treated to a hot meal, which consisted of 2 spoonfuls of rice and 1 hard cracker.
We ain't had nothing but maggoty bread for 3 stinking days.
After finally reaching their destination, Al's squad was told to dig in near the west bank of the Tenaroo River, about 100 yards from the ocean itself. Al and the boys weren't taking any chances with their position, so they proceeded to spend the next 5 days building a nest that was less of a machine gun fighting position and more like a camouflaged medieval fort. They kept a 24-hour shift with 2 to 3 men up at a time, and while the primary loader was Al and Johnny was the loader, everyone in the squad was ready to jump in and take up whatever position needed to be filled at a moment's notice. This was something that they had practiced over and over and over again, and in fact, dead gunner machine gun drills are something that the United States Marine Corps still practices to this day. That machine gun was the most important member of the squad, and every single one of them knew it. They kept it clean, they greased it, they petted it, and they even painted a shamrock on it for Al and the word chief on it for Johnny, since he was half Native American. The other squad members would even poke fun at Al because he could be seen petting the barrel and speaking to it, quote, "Well, baby, are you gonna speak your piece tonight?"
You know what? I think it's time for your first beer. What do you say? Delicious.
Al tried his best to keep his spirits up, but the truth of the matter was that he was hurting bad. His blistered feet had only gotten worse, and they were so bad in fact that the doc would constantly have to keep cutting the blisters off. And to add even more misery, he had a swollen gland the size of a walnut that had formed, and the doctors told him that he was dangerously close to blood poisoning. Al told the doc that he'd come back and get it checked out later, so in the meantime, he just went back to his area to try to get some sleep. So he's just laying there under his blanket with his feet screaming and his leg throbbing from pain, and that's when he heard it. At around 1 o'clock in the morning, a loud bang went off overhead. The Japanese were dropping flares all around them, and that was quickly followed by their machine guns. The Japanese sent so much tracer fire their direction that it appeared to Al like it was raining around them. Within a matter of seconds, Al threw off his blanket, pulled on his boots, grabbed his .45, and began crawling over to his machine gun nest. The fight was now officially on. The machine gun fire was so accurate and so intense that getting to his machine gun was about damn near impossible. But eventually he managed to rush and crawl and dive his way to it before he was finally able to be pulled in. While Johnny got ready behind the gun and Al took up his position as the loader, they were ordered to hold their fire until the Japanese started to cross the river. Firing too soon could give away their position, and they'd need every advantage they could if they wanted to survive this fight. It was only 200 Marines, 2 machine guns, and 2 anti-tank guns versus 1,000 Japanese who were now making their way across this river.
Let's give the people what they came for.
Al could feel the pounding in his chest beginning to lessen. His training had kicked in, and finally, him and Johnny got to work. Their machine guns opened up, and at the same time, the second one, manned by Bull Warren, had done the same. Johnny and Al raked the gun back and forth across the mass of Japanese, doing everything they could to ensure that they achieved maximum effect on target.
That way you harvest more meat per bullet.
It didn't take long for the Japanese to finally lock in on them, and suddenly, rounds came flying into their nest with so much saturation that to Al, it felt like they were literally drowning in bullets. The noise was horrendously deafening until suddenly, the loudest sound in the world cut through the rest. To Al's right side, all he could hear was the sound of nothing. Absolutely nothing. Bull's gun had stopped firing, and before Al even had enough time to process whether or not he was okay, his gun stopped firing too. Johnny had been hit. Rounds had ripped into his face, and he fell back into the trench without making so much as a sound. Al felt his heart drop. Seeing his best friend go out like that made the hate within him rise even more. At first, that hate felt hot, and then it went cold, and then, without even thinking, he moved over to the gun. Another squad member named Lee took over the loading for him, and the two of them together decided to put in a little overtime.
I'm gonna get you home, sir. I'm gonna get you home.
When Al got behind that gun, he no longer felt fear. He wasn't angry. Hell, the man wasn't even tired at this point. A cool confidence fell over him, and he began to swing the gun back and forth across the Japanese. And guys, to be clear, this wasn't just Al blindly firing off in the distance, aka spraying and praying. Negative, because keep in mind that we are talking about the United States Marine Corps here, and in the hands of a Marine, a rifle is nothing more than a tool to dish out personalized justice. But a machine gun, on the other hand, is a Marine's chance to spread the word of America to the masses. Al knew he was making good hits in this target-rich environment because he could actually hear the sound of the bullets bouncing off the top of their steel helmets. During this fight, Al would even play a little psychological warfare by targeting officers off in the distance. And he knew they were officers because he could hear what sounded like orders being yelled, and then he would just concentrate all of his fire in that general direction. And it didn't even matter if he scored a direct hit or not on that officer because it was enough to just completely rattle their cages. In their panic, the Japanese would then run towards the most illuminated terrain feature that they could find in an attempt to get away from Al's fire. And this would only play right into his hands because he would just wait for them to get close enough, and then he would just unload on them like sitting ducks in water only 50 yards away. That might as well be point blank range. Al was straight up locked in and getting it done, and his adrenaline was pumping so hard that his loader Lee had to keep punching him in the arm just to get his attention so that he would adjust fire in a different direction. At one point, a Japanese machine gunner had had enough of Al and Lee's shit, so he poured so many rounds in their direction that he actually managed to put a string of bullets right through their gun's water jacket. Almost immediately, all the water poured out and whatever was left evaporated against the red hot barrel. But for whatever reason, the gun didn't jam like it should have, so undeterred, Lee located the guy who just hurt their most precious of killing instruments, and Al restores balance to the world by silencing him as retribution. The Japanese were absolutely relentless and got so close that Lee stuck his ricing machine gun across the top of his berm and let loose a couple of rounds and took 3 of them out.
Did that go the way you thought it was gonna go? Nope.
In retaliation to that, Lee managed to catch a bullet in his arm and was knocked back across Al's feet, but Al stayed on the gun and just kept on firing and now loading all by himself. Al didn't care what happened to him because he knew that the most important thing was that that gun kept on firing. So what he would do is that he would keep an eye on his belt every few seconds, and then right before it got close to the end, he would just let loose one more solid burst. He would rip the gun open, stick in a new belt, and get right back to it. Al kept this up for more than 4 hours. 4 hours without any help at all. Even when other Marines came in to reinforce him, he just kept at it, and with each passing minute, he was steadily breaking the Japanese lines. Early the next morning, Marine tanks were finally able to make it across the river and kill off any remaining Japanese, but unfortunately, at least one managed to make it through. Without warning, Al was hit with a blinding flash of light, followed by an explosion. A Japanese soldier had managed to set off a grenade near his machine gun, and Al took most of the blast directly to his face. Al fell back in the trench, and the Japanese continued to pour bullets into his nest. And guys, Al, for lack of a better term, is completely up. His face was shredded, blood was pouring into his mouth, and the only thing that he could do now was to grab his .45 and prepare to do what had to be done. Now, Lee saw this and figured that Al was going to shoot himself, but Al looked at him and said, "Hell, don't worry about that. I'm gonna get the first that tries to get in here." And Lee is just dumbfounded by this, so he just looks over to him and says, "But Al, you can't see."
Yes, I know that.
To which Al, without skipping a beat, responds with, "That's alright, just tell me what direction they're coming from and I'll get them. I can smell the rotten buggers." Al and the boys would stay put for another hour, but eventually the fight was finally over. When all was said and done, more than 800 Japanese had tried to cross the Tenaru, only 15 were captured alive, and all the rest were killed.
Damn!
And to be clear, these weren't your run-of-the-mill ordinary Japanese soldiers. No, these were true infantrymen with brand new uniforms with medals on their chest, which meant that these men were some of the best that Japan had to throw at them. Clearly, their best wasn't good enough because the number of bodies within the range of Al's machine gun numbered in the hundreds, with multiple Marine accounts crediting him with at least 200 by himself. It was undeniable that Al was the hero of the island, but once he got off of it, his longest fight was about to begin. After the battle had ended, it became crystal clear how truly messed up Al was. His face and eyes were riddled with shrapnel. He had chunks of skin missing. He had a concussion. He had powder burns all over his chest. His feet were still jacked up from blisters. The potential blood poisoning in his leg that he had been putting off since before the firefight began was getting even worse. And to top it all off, his left eye had swollen to the size of a golf ball, and it seemed very likely like he was going to lose it. In Al's own mind, he was going to survive all of this, but to everyone else, he looked dead. And when I say dead, I mean literally the man looked dead, because when Al was moved from the beach to the Higgins boat and then finally making it to the destroyer, he could actually hear someone say, quote, "Geez, it ain't no use taking him down. He's dead." Upon hearing this, Al has shifted from pain to full-on panic at this point, and he is scared out of his mind. He can't see, he can't move, and he can't even speak. He is effectively paralyzed, and if he can't get their attention and let them know that he's not dead, he's gonna be buried at sea, aka they're gonna throw him overboard. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he managed to wiggle just a couple of fingers on his right hand, and somehow that was enough to get the attention of someone. Over the next several weeks, Al would undergo numerous surgeries on his eyes, legs, and feet, but unfortunately, no matter how many times they tried, they could not save his left eye. But in true Marine Corps fashion, the only way to get through shit moments in life is with gratuitous amounts of dark humor. He and his bunkmate Eddie, who had taken 3 rounds to the leg, would absolutely bash on each other constantly to pass the time. Al would look over to him and say, "Jesus Christmas, anyone who got 3 bullets in his leg doesn't deserve to live. When he gets 1, he ought to know enough to pull his leg in." To which Eddie would respond in kind, "Well, at least I didn't try to play catch with a damn hand grenade."
Very nice.
Eventually, they'd all make it back stateside, and Al did not want to be hauled off on a stretcher. Al decided to make the painful walk onto land to the cheers of Marines screaming at him, "Yeah, Smitty! Yatta boy, Smitty!" Now, while all of this was going on, Ruth had received very little in the way of letters, but eventually, they'd start to trickle in. Al had become something of a minor celebrity, but despite this, he would constantly struggle with his appearance and the lack of sight in his remaining eye. Even after some of his sight would return, Al and Ruth's relationship would remain on a constant emotional roller coaster. One day he'd have the nurses write to Ruth and say that he loved her more than life itself, and then other days he would tell her to stop writing and attempt to put distance between them. In Al's mind, he struggled to make money even before the war had begun, and now that he was half blind and mostly blown up, now it would be even harder than ever. He didn't want to become a burden on Ruth for the rest of his life, and this thought is something that he struggled with it for months during his recovery. All the while this was going on, Al's story would be printed in the papers, and his status as a celebrity would turn from minor to major almost overnight. Al would eventually return home and reunite with Ruth, but the Marines weren't quite done with him yet. General Vandergrift, the Marine commander on Guadalcanal, would meet with Al and other Marines, and not long after that, he'd receive a promotion to corporal, as well as the Navy Cross for his actions on the beach. Slowly but surely, Al and Ruth's relationship would rekindle, and during a trip to New Orleans, the Marines would come in to help him with one final mission. A few local Marines helped Al and Ruth coordinate a private wedding, hopefully away from the papers and prying eyes. When they finally made their way into the judge's private chambers, they both felt incredibly tense and nervous about the situation. That is until it came time for the part where Al had to slip on the ring. Ruth put out her hand, Al took the ring and is just sort of fumbling around with it, probably because, I don't know, he can't see very well, but the judge just keeps on right along saying his piece. And this kept on, and Al continued to struggle with it before he just blurted out, "Wait a minute, Judge, I can't get the damn thing on her finger." Only a Marine could turn his debilitating blindness into belly laughter on the most important day of his life. Al and Ruth married on April 4th, 1943, and they had a son, Al Schmid Jr., in June of 1944. Al was honorably discharged from the Marine Corps on December 9th, 1944, and his legacy would grow even further through Roger Butterfield's book, Al Schmid the Marine, and the Warner Brothers film, Pride of the Marines, in 1945. Al Schmid died on December 1st, 1982, and Ruth continued on until she too passed away on September 12th, 2002. They were both laid to rest at Arlington National Cemetery. So, to recap, in the words of the Fat Electrician, don't you ever touch America's boats, beware of a Marine and his rifle, and if you are thinking about taking on a Marine and his machine gun, you might consider bringing more than 1,000 guys with you because it ain't gonna be enough. I appreciate y'all watching, and if you want to support me and this channel, then go ahead and get yourself some tactically acquired merch at tangoalpha.store. Tack out. Late in September, Ruth got a letter from somewhere in the Pacific Ocean dated August 26. The writing was strange. The envelope was charred around the edges, as if it had been through a fire or something. It was the letter that Al had requested a sailor write for him while he was on the hospital ship. "Dear Ruth," it began. "I don't know how to start this letter, as I am not very good at writing. Al wanted me to write this letter for him, as he has been wounded in battle. I am a sailor, and am taking care of him. He is all right, and I wouldn't worry about him. I will tell you honestly, and truly though, that he is a hero, and I do mean hero. The battle goes this way. The dirty Japs tried to cross a river in forces outnumbering our forces. Al was on a machine gun, and he held his fire until he could see the slant in their eyes. Then he opened fire on them, and mowed them down. So many they were piled 4 feet deep. He said he will be coming home soon, one of these days. and he hoped to see you real soon. And then, still in the strange handwriting, lots of love, Al Schmid.